Here we are in the 21st century, country music lives on. I found out at 4 years old, a heart can be touched with a song.
Good morning. Welcome to the program. It is a pleasure to have in the studio music legends Bobby Mackey and Gary Mackey. Danny Weddle and I are in the studio to talk to them about their career and their connection to WFTM and this area. Pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much. I'll tell you, this brings back a lot of great memories here walking into this studio. Gary and I we did a Saturday morning radio show here probably in 1958, 59, and this brings back a lot of great memories. So this is a great room.
Gary, what do you think?
I still miss the old teletype machine, but yes, this does bring back memories. The beautiful studio.
I know it was hard to get onto the microphone because we just started telling stories, and wonderful to listen to you guys talk about the station, the way it was, the start of your career, and life in this area when you guys were growing up.
The picture you showed of Rainey Dunnigan brought back a lot of memories, too. She used to pick us up, and we'd go to revivals with her and sing in church when I was so small that she was telling me not long ago, reminding me how small I was and how big the guitar was.
I'm sure you know Rainey Dunnigan's name is very big in this area.
Absolutely.
Very big.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can still hear her every Saturday morning, Way of the Cross, 10 o'clock on WFTM AM.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
I've known her since I can remember anything.
Well, let's talk about your growing up, where you were raised and how you got into music.
Well, we raised up in Concord, Kentucky. Our dad ran a grocery store and went to Covedale grade school and then Tollsboro High School. And I started singing when I was 4 years old, singing some Hank Williams songs. Hank Williams was the only singer I thought there was. I was singing Your Cheating Heart and stuff like that. And sang a talent contest in Trinity one time when I was 4 years old and won a $5 bill first prize singing Your Cheating Heart.
And that's a lot of money.
Then at 8 years old, I got a guitar. My oldest brother bought me a guitar for Christmas, and I learned to play, and then Gary learned to play too. And on into our teenage years, we sang a lot of Buck Owens and Don Rich stuff. Gary was the Don Rich, and I was the Buck Owens. We made a lot of music, and we played at a lot of talent contests. We used to play at the New Boston Jamboree up in New Boston there. We did a lot of playing for a square dance down here in Dover. Every Saturday at the old Button Factory down there, they made a dance hall out of it. Gary and I would play guitars along with the fiddle player. That was a great time, wasn't it, Gary?
It was. It was a wonderful time.
We learned a lot.
You talked about your first trip in performing here. Were people back home listening? This was a big deal to come down and be on the radio?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody back at home was listening, had it all tuned in. Our dad used to haul tobacco down here to the warehouses when we were kids, too.
Everyone that describes your music as traditional, as classic. You fell in love with it. You grew up with it. What does it hold for you? Why do you keep with that style of music?
Well, it's what made me love it to start with, and it's my passion. I love the old music, and there's not a lot of new music that's country anymore. It's kind of gone way out there. So I couldn't find songs that I liked from any other artist today, so I wrote my own songs. I've always sung the traditional, but I wrote 12 songs that's on a new album I just released called Country Music Lives On, and it's getting a lot of attention.
You got great reviews. Where can we get it?
RJ's got one in his pocket.
Hey, everybody, just get a hold of RJ and you can get your copy right now.
But it is available. It is available on iTunes and Amazon and on BobbyMackey.com.
When did you decide to go from doing covers of other people's music to writing your own?
Well, I used to write some years ago and then kind of got away from it. I didn't have a lot of confidence in it. And I kind of grew into it, and all of a sudden it came easy for me. I never had a lot of confidence in writing, but when I developed that confidence, and it came pretty easy, and it was very rewarding too.
Was looking at a review for your new CD. The headline was, Bobby Mackey is keeping the spirit of country music alive, and says that listening to your music, one could almost forget the last 30 years of country music ever happened.
Well, you know, that makes a lot of sense. That song actually tells about growing up in Concord and singing along with my dad's jukebox at the old grocery store there, and then leaving there and going to Cincinnati and getting with the country band and the nightclub. It tells kind of the whole story where I'm at today.
Is that where all of your music comes from? Life experiences?
Pretty much. A good idea is a good idea as long as I can put it to words.
You mentioned writing eventually became easy, and I've heard some artists talk about, I had this moment that I just sat down and wrote this song in a matter of minutes. Do you have a story like that, or one that sticks out?
Well, usually if I get an idea and start to write a song and get excited about it, I will finish the song. If I ever have the thought, well, I'll kind of blank here. If I put this away for a while, maybe I'll come back and look at it again. It's really hard to go back and do that. When I've got the inspiration, if it takes 2 or 3 hours, I usually finish the song.
You mentioned this song, how you go from Concord to Cincinnati. Just talk about how that happened. We've talked about you won contests here, but just kind of take us to where you got to Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati.
As you mentioned, I've won a lot of contests growing up as a kid, 4-H shows and things like that, and played any place that I could. But when I graduated from high school, I went down to Covington and got a job on the railroad. I was a road brakeman, and in just a few years I got laid off on the railroad, and I had the opportunity to get with a band and get into music full time. For 8 years I played other clubs. And I had the opportunity to get my own club in Wilder, Kentucky. It was an old gambling casino, and it had been closed up. Once I saw the place, a few changes had to be made, but I was just hooked and had to have the place. I could stand on the stage, and it needed a lot of work, but I was inspired by it, and I could see in my mind's eye, I could see it working. Maybe if I couldn't have seen that, I might not have been so excited about getting it, but I'm still there 36 years later.
I cannot imagine the leap. I'm a musician. I want to have my own place. That had to have been scary.
Well, yeah, it was, but I was always positive thinking and, had to make this work. There was a boy right up the street, lived at the closest house to the old building. The old building was called the Latin Quarter. It was a gambling casino that when it became the Latin Quarter was actually the year I was born. And I don't know how much you have heard about the hauntings about the place. Ghost Adventures has come in and done shows on it. In January, I was in Vegas filming a follow-up to the Ghost Adventure show, and it's aired on the Travel Channel. And it brings people from virtually all over the world wanting to spend the night in there. It's really crazy. And I don't even believe in it, but so many people do. I'm actually in the minority because a whole lot more people believe in it than don't, I've found out.
Well, I noticed the tagline on your websites, come for the ghost, stay for the music. So if you're fans of either, then this is the place to be.
Yeah, but when people are in the nightclub and everything's happening, we got the dance floor full, nobody's even thinking about the ghost. I mean, some people are excited about it, but on a Saturday night, it's the last thing people are thinking about. And we do run tours to the basement, too, during the night. Everybody wants to see that old basement. And I'll tell you what, that old building, if there can be a ghost, if paranormal can be anywhere, it would probably be there.
Even ghosts like good music.
Yeah, I hope so. If there is a ghost there, it's always treated me good.
You mentioned the last time that you were in the studio, and I remember when the record came out, Pepsi Man.
Yeah, and I remember dropping that off. I was on my way up to visit the folks up in Concord and stopped in. That was in 1982. And when it hit the charts, I was so very excited. It went to the top 50 in Billboard national charts.
How'd that song come around?
A friend of mine, Dennis Hensley, at Jordan Recording Studio there in Taylor Mill, a friend of mine, and lo and behold, the guy that wrote it was one of those air traffic controllers that got laid off when Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers when they were on strike, and he lost his job. And there was a guy that lived next door to him that drove a Pepsi truck, and he'd see him every morning go out, rain or shine or snow, and drive off in that truck, and he wrote a song about it. Well, he stopped in the studio and played the song for Dennis Hensley, and Dennis called me and said, I found a song for you. Said, this is perfect for you, called Pepsi Man. So I went over there, and sure enough, he was right, and I recorded it.
Let's talk about your musical influences. Who really hit you when you were young?
Even though it's only 2 years difference between Bobby and my age, we grew up with a little bit different style. When my mother was listening to the radio and hanging up clothes and whatever, I was listening to Judy Garland. And when Bobby came along, it was Hank Williams. So that gave us a little bit different style. But when it comes to country music, people lump it all together. But this traditional classic country is different. And Bobby capitalizes on that, and it works. He capitalizes on it both in his writing and in his format at the club, and it does work.
And I guess you really saw the changeover when the Hat performers, Garth and Clint and George, started coming in, and you really started to see more of a mixture where adult contemporary and crossover country and the old style of country, you guys are keeping the legacy alive.
Yeah, well, I never did get into the cowboy hat thing, but during that era of Garth Brooks, the cowboys that were coming to the nightclub, every other one of them looked just like Garth Brooks. They had that shirt on and cowboy hat, and most of them thought they were Garth Brooks there for a long time. But that was an era of its own. You know, we went through the urban cowboy era. I opened the nightclub in 1978, and 79 I heard about them making the urban cowboy movie out in Pasadena, outside of Houston there. That's when I met RJ. He was a sales rep at a radio station there in Cincinnati, and he was my sales rep, and we were talking about promotions, things we could do for the club, and I'd seen in this magazine where they were making this movie about the mechanical bull and all that, and that they had them for sale. And I mentioned to him, and the hotshot promoter that he is, he called me back later that night and told me that he had found out how much a bull costs and how long it takes to get it.
Didn't mess around.
He did not. He did not mess around. So we thought it over and thought, wow, you know, I can't order one without seeing it and without experiencing it. So we caught a plane and flew to Houston, and Gillies had Gator, who was in the Urban Cowboy movie, a boy named Gator. They sent him with a Gillies T-shirt on, so when we got to the baggage, we looked for the guy in the Gillies T-shirt. He hauled us to Gillies. We watched everybody ride the bull, and I decided I believe the Kentucky boys would be equally as into the riding the mechanical bull as they were there in Texas. So we bought one, had it delivered, and it's still sitting there today and still have just as many riders.